Back on SportsCenter with breaking news.
Sources tell me the U.S. District Attorney's Office is investigating Detroit Pistons guard Malik Beasley on allegations of gambling on NBA games and prop bets. I'm told it was during allegedly.
Malik Beasley was never supposed to be the face of a scandal. He wasn't a superstar. He didn't lead the league in anything. But somehow, his name ended up tied to one of the NBA's most quietly explosive investigations. Because behind his streaky scoring and quiet demeanor, there were late-night meetings, suspicious bets, and one mysterious figure lurking in the background, a man known only as Moose. Nobody knows where he came from, but insiders say Moose had a direct line to several NBA players, including Beasley. And when the betting patterns got too perfect and the numbers stopped adding up, the league started asking questions. Beasley kept playing, but something felt off. The performances, the patterns, the rumors swirling behind the scenes, and Moose vanished without a trace. This wasn't just a string of bad decisions. It looked like something deeper, something dangerous. And the more you uncover, the more it feels like Beasley was either caught in a trap or helping to build one. Let's investigate. So, why Malik Beasley? He wasn't a superstar. He didn't headline All-Star Weekend. He was a role player, a bench scorer with range, good enough to stick on a roster, but not someone who normally makes waves off the stat sheet. Drafted 19th overall in 2016, Beasley bounced around Denver, Minnesota, Utah, the Lakers, Milwaukee, and eventually the Detroit Pistons. He shot threes. He played hard. He stayed professional, mostly out of the spotlight. That is, until the money followed. In 2020, Beasley was arrested after brandishing a rifle outside his own home during a heated exchange with his wife's ex-husband. He served jail time and received a league suspension. It wasn't career-ending, more like a caution flag. It cast a shadow, but Beasley kept grinding. Off the court, he grabbed attention again, this time with a high-profile relationship with Larsa Pippen that drew tabloid heat. Again, nothing major, still not headline scan, but enough to track in the background. Fast forward to 2024, Beasley was contributing consistently for the Bucks. He shot 38% from deep, averaged 10 points, and brought veteran minutes. In the nuts and bolts world of NBA betting, that makes him valuable. Not flashy, but reliable enough to shift outcomes and create prop opportunities. That's where things begin to click. Because in the NBA's betting universe, players like Beasley matter. They're predictable. Line shifts react. Sportsbooks flag outliers. And that's exactly what happened. When Beasley's rebound props started drawing suspicious betting volume, enough to swing lines dramatically, it caught the eye of compliance software. Something that's simple, something consistent. It was enough to pull the thread. Combine that with the rifle incident, the dating headlines, and those inconsistent rotations, and suddenly you have a player with enough volatility to raise eyebrows, but enough consistency to fuel bets. So yes, Beasley is the unlikely face of this scandal. Not because he did something overtly shady, but because he matched the perfect profile. A mid-level guy with off-court drama, predictable production, and no superstar attention. Which begs the question, if someone behind the scenes is leaking info or manipulating lines, why not target embedded, buy-in players like Beasley? They're easier to approach. Less media noise, high impact where it matters most. That's how this started flying under the radar until it didn't. Because when the betting patterns became too precise, someone had no choice but to ask questions. What looked like small dots on the radar started to form a picture. And that picture pointed squarely at one player who, frankly, didn't see it coming. The turning point in this entire scandal didn't come from the NBA. It didn't come from a player, a coach, or a journalist. It came from a tweet. On January 30th, 2025, a burner Twitter account with the handle @FreeMooseNBA posted one cryptic sentence. First was John Tay, then was Rozier. Next, you'll hear about MB. No further context, no attached article, no follow-up. The tweet was deleted within hours. The account wiped from the platform soon after. And just like that, Moose disappeared. At the time, nobody thought much of it. Beasley wasn't in the news. There was no investigation, no leaked story, no controversy brewing. It felt like just another anonymous troll fishing for attention in the endless noise of NBA Twitter. But 5 months later, in May 2025, federal prosecutors and the NBA's Integrity Unit launched an active investigation into suspicious betting activity involving Malik Beasley's player props. And suddenly, people started connecting the dots. The tweet had predicted it, not vaguely, not with hints, but with precision. It named Beasley directly, and it knew the feds were coming before anyone else did. That's when people started asking, who is Moose? To this day, no one knows. There's no known identity, no legal name tied to the account, no business record. But based on his brief digital footprint, Moose wasn't just a troll. He operated like someone with access. He tweeted with strange accuracy, calling out targets, teasing projects, and referencing off-the-record details only someone close to the game would know. In now deleted replies, Moose hinted at making money off a certain incident and warned of vets next in line. The tweets weren't wild guesses, they were timed and specific, and they weren't limited to Beasley. Though the account vanished, screenshots of his posts were preserved and verified by multiple outlets. His warning about Beasley lined up almost exactly with the timeline of the real-world investigation. But here's the unsettling part. There's still no confirmed connection between Moose and Malik Beasley. No evidence of communication, no shared transactions, nothing provable, just a single tweet and a trail of chaos that followed. Which leads to the deeper fear. If Moose didn't know Beasley personally, how How did he know this was going to happen? Was he tied to a sports book? Was he getting inside information from someone close to a team? Or was he something else entirely, part of a larger betting network that's been operating in the background of professional sports? Nobody knows. But one thing's clear. Moose didn't just predict a scandal. He exposed a weak point, one that might be far more vulnerable than the NBA wants to admit. The investigation into Malik Beasley didn't begin with a leak. It wasn't a teammate speaking out, and it definitely wasn't the NBA trying to police itself. It started with data. During the 2023-24 NBA season, a U.S. sportsbook flagged suspicious betting activity on multiple Beasley prop bets. Most notably, his rebound totals. One game stood out. Beasley's over-under for rebounds was set at 3.5, but in the hours leading up to tip-off, something unusual happened. The betting volume on the oversight spiked dramatically, causing the line to shift from plus 120 to minus 250. That's a massive swing, the kind of movement that doesn't happen without serious action and confidence behind it. Then Beasley went out and grabbed 6 rebounds, enough to hit the over and trigger payouts. But that's not what set off alarms. What triggered the alert was the timing and scale of the wagers. Bets placed unusually close to tip-off, in large enough volume to move the line significantly, and all focused on a very specific, low-profile stat. This wasn't someone throwing down $20 and getting lucky. This looked like someone knew exactly what was going to happen. Once that red flag hit the system, the sportsbook escalated the matter to internal integrity monitors, who then shared the data with federal authorities and the NBA's integrity unit. That's when the real investigation began. According to multiple sources, federal prosecutors in the Eastern District of New York, the same office that investigated the Jonte Porter case, began reviewing the pattern of wagers. They looked at who placed the bets, when they were placed, how much money was involved, and whether any of it could be traced back to individuals connected to players, teams, or league personnel. The NBA's integrity unit also started quietly cross-referencing internal data, including injury reports, team access logs, and potential leaks from within team circles. No player names were made public, but Beasley's case had officially entered federal territory. It's important to note, as of now, Malik Beasley has not been charged with a crime, and there is no public evidence that he personally placed any bets. But in sports betting investigations, it's not just about who's betting, it's about who's talking. And the core question investigators are trying to answer is simple. Did someone close to Beasley leak inside information, knowingly or not, that gave bettors an edge? That's all it takes. One piece of unreleased information, one text, one phone call to the wrong person at the wrong time, and suddenly, you've got a betting scandal unfolding beneath the surface of a league that now markets live odds on every broadcast. It didn't matter that Beasley was still playing. It didn't matter that there were no charges. Once the betting line moved that much, that fast, someone was going to start digging. While the investigation remained behind closed doors, Malik Beasley's public behavior only made things feel more suspicious. No official statements, no denials, not even a vague Instagram story addressing the rumors. Around the same time, news broke that Beasley was facing multiple lawsuits over unpaid debts, including a marketing agency suing him for $2.4 million, and several others alleging he owed hundreds of thousands for bridge loans, personal expenses, and business deals gone wrong. In total, Beasley's outstanding debt claims reportedly climbed to over $8 million. It painted a troubling picture. A player under financial pressure, and a player whose betting lines just happened to be at the center of a federal investigation. Beasley never addressed any of it directly. No interviews, no comments, just silence. But for fans and for investigators, silence doesn't always mean innocence. Sometimes it signals something else, caution. Because when you're under the microscope, even a one-word post can feel like a signal flare. Everything happening around Beasley, the lawsuits, the betting line movements, the disappearing burner accounts was unfolding all at once, and the people watching were no longer just fans or reporters. They were federal prosecutors. In the middle of all this, the investigations, the lawsuits, the cryptic posts, another twist quietly changed the trajectory of Malik Beasley's career. Just weeks before the federal probe became public, Beasley was reportedly in talks with the Detroit Pistons on a new contract extension. According to multiple league insiders, Detroit was ready to offer a deal worth up to $42 million. Beasley signed with Detroit in free agency on a one-year deal worth $6 million in 2024. The extension would have been a massive payday for a role player, and potentially the biggest contract Beasley had received since his extension with Minnesota in 2020. The money made sense. Beasley had just come off a strong season in Detroit, shooting over 41% from deep, one of the best marks in the league among high-volume shooters. The Pistons are in need of floor spacing, veteran shooting, and someone who can help balance their young backcourt. Everything was aligning. And then, nothing. The offer didn't go through. The contract never materialized. No formal reason was given. No leaks, no explanations, no reports of failed negotiations. But the timing was hard to ignore. The deal collapsed just as the suspicious betting patterns were gaining attention behind the scenes. lines, when sportsbooks were flagging Beasley's player props, and when the now infamous Moose tweet had already hinted that something bigger was coming. To be clear, there's no public evidence that Detroit pulled the offer because of the investigation. The front office never commented on the situation, and Beasley hasn't spoken publicly about what happened during those talks. But in a league where teams pour millions into background checks, contract negotiations don't fall apart without reason. And when a $42 million offer disappears without warning, at the exact moment the player becomes the quiet focus of a federal betting probe, it's hard not to connect the dots. Even if you want to believe it was all just coincidence, the silence surrounding the deal only added fuel to the fire. And whether it was due to performance, negotiation, or something deeper, it was clear that the story behind the scenes was starting to catch up with the one playing out on the court. As the federal investigation gained momentum behind the scenes, Malik Beasley was facing another crisis, this one entirely in the open. In early 2024, court documents revealed that Beasley was being sued for millions of dollars across multiple lawsuits. The numbers were staggering. According to filings, he owed over $8 million to various lenders, agencies, and business associates. In total, at least 4 separate lenders came forward claiming they were owed money. One even alleged that Beasley used his expected contract with the Detroit Pistons as collateral, assuming the deal would go through. When it didn't, everything collapsed. These weren't shady, off-the-books deals. They were filed in civil court, with documentation, contracts, and loan records attached. Everything was above board, which made the situation even more glaring. Because when you zoom out, the timeline becomes hard to ignore. Massive debt surface. A potential $42 million contract vanishes. A burner account predicts a federal probe. Suspicious betting activity gets flagged, and Beasley remains silent through it all. Again, there's no public evidence that these lawsuits are connected to the gambling investigation. But for investigators, financial pressure is often a red flag, not because it proves guilt, but because it creates motive. In the world of sports, betting scandals, financial stress isn't a smoking gun, it's the kindling. And in Beasley's case, there was now a documented paper trail of high-stakes debt, evaporated earnings, and legal disputes, all converging at the exact moment he became the center of the NBA's most quietly escalating scandal. Whether he was simply over-leveraged or whether those pressures led to something more compromising, that's what investigators are still trying to figure out. One of the most critical and still unanswered questions in this story is simple. What did the NBA know, and when did they know it? According to reports from ESPN and multiple league insiders, the NBA's integrity unit was first made aware of suspicious betting activity involving Malik Beasley sometime during the 2023-24 season. This is standard protocol. When a sportsbook flags abnormal line movement or betting volume, that data gets passed to the league's integrity monitors, and from there, to the team of investigators tasked with protecting the league's image. In this case, the data wasn't subtle. Beasley's player prop bets, particularly rebounds and assists, were getting unusual action. Large wagers, late movement, consistent results. It was the kind of pattern that, while not definitive proof of wrongdoing, absolutely raises concern, especially in a league where the lines between fantasy, gambling, and performance are now tighter than ever. Behind the scenes, the NBA opened a quiet investigation. That means no public announcement, no player suspension, no leaked memos. The goal? Contain the situation, determine if any league rules were violated, and most importantly, figure out whether this was an isolated incident or part of something bigger. At the same time, federal prosecutors from the Eastern District of New York were already digging. This is the same office that led the investigation into Jonte Porter, who was banned for life in April 2024 after being caught leaking inside information and sitting out games for betting purposes. That case set a precedent, and it made one thing very clear. If a player was involved, directly or indirectly, in manipulating outcomes or sharing inside information, the punishment would be severe. So now, Beasley was under dual scrutiny, one from the NBA and one from federal investigators. But unlike the Porter case, there was no smoking gun, no text messages, no phone records released, at least not yet. And while all of this was unfolding in the background, Beasley was still suiting up, still playing minutes, still producing for the Bucks and later the Pistons. No public discipline, no media blowback, just silence. That silence has become its own kind of story, because when the league knows something's wrong, when their internal systems flag it, when the feds get involved, but they keep the player on the court, it raises a deeper question. Is the NBA trying to investigate quietly to preserve integrity, or is it trying to contain the damage? Either way, they're walking a tightrope, because every game Beasley plays, every bet placed, every tweet about Moose just draws more eyes to a scandal that's getting harder and harder to keep quiet. For months, Moose was just a whisper, a faceless burner account claiming to know more than it should. But thanks to a joint investigation led by journalist Pablo Torre and analyst Tom Habestro, we now know exactly who was behind the @FreeMoose NBA account, Mustafa Omar. The discovery wasn't accidental. After noticing suspicious posts tied to NBA player prop bets, Reddit users began digging through archived screenshots and old Twitter replies. That digital trail led to a unique writing style, a mix of emojis, phrasing, and timing that matched comments Omar had posted in niche sports gambling gambling forums. The more people looked, the more obvious the connection became. What started as speculation became fact when Omar agreed to a recorded interview with Haberstroh. In that conversation, Omar confirmed that he was, in fact, the person behind the burner. He claimed the account wasn't about gambling, it was about warning people. According to him, he saw what was happening with Beasley before anyone else did, and his tweets were meant to sound the alarm. But the way he chose to do it, anonymously, cryptically, and in the middle of a growing betting scandal, only deepened the controversy. Omar never explicitly said how he got his information. He denied receiving inside tips from players or placing any illegal bets himself, but his digital footprint told a murkier story. The tweets from the Moose account didn't just predict that something was going to happen. They did so with unnerving accuracy, including direct references to Beasley's personal issues, his debt, and his ties to people who might be involved in off-book gambling activity. What raised even more questions was Omar's connection to another figure, Omar Awade. Reddit sleuths and later journalists uncovered that Omar and Awade had a long-running online relationship. They appeared together in multiple social media posts, often interacting in private circles, where player performance and betting lines were casually discussed. While Awade has not been charged with anything, and there is no public evidence directly connecting him to the investigation, the association added another layer of concern. Both men appeared to have knowledge of NBA players' routines and habits, and both were active in the online betting scene. Still, the most damning piece isn't a single bet or text, it's the totality of what was said and when. The @Free Moose NBA tweets were posted months before news of a federal investigation broke. They referenced Beasley by name, they hinted at financial issues and legal trouble, and then they disappeared, right as sportsbooks began flagging Beasley's props, and right before the feds quietly started asking questions. In his interview, Omar claimed that he was never trying to start a scandal. He also claimed to have no ties to Omar Awade, but by the time his account was traced, the damage was done. His predictions lined up too closely with real-world events. His tone was too specific, and his ties to others in the betting world were too obvious to ignore. So now, Moose has a name, a voice, a trackable online history, and for the first time, the NBA isn't dealing with a rumor, they're dealing with a person. The question now isn't whether Moose was real, it's how far his influence went, and who, if anyone, was listening. Malik Beasley hasn't been suspended, he hasn't been charged, and to this day, he hasn't spoken publicly about the investigation. But the numbers don't lie. The debt is real, the bets were flagged, and Moose, whoever he is, predicted it all before the first headline dropped. This isn't just about one player anymore, it's about how vulnerable the league has become to a system built on live odds, private access, and personal pressure. And if Beasley was just the first name to surface, who's next? Because this story is still developing, the investigation is still active, and the league, whether they admit it or not, is watching very, very closely. If you want to stay ahead of the story, hit that subscribe button right now. We've got more coming, deeper dives, hidden scandals, and the stories nobody else is telling. And when the next domino falls, you'll be the first to know. So drop a like if you made it this far and let us know in the comments. Do you think Beasley was involved or just caught in the crossfire? Either way, this isn't the end, not even close.